The spellbinding practice of the ancient Egyptians to help their dearly departed cross over to the next world has enthralled Egyptologists for more than a century, with scientists poring over mortuary papyri to unravel their mysteries. New analysis of an ancient papyrus, the first book of breathing, has offered fascinating revelations pertaining to its derivation from the Book of the Dead and, on a broader scale, the intricacies of postmodern deification in ancient Egypt. The books of breathing are several late ancient Egyptian funerary texts that ostensibly enabled the deceased to continue to exist in the afterlife, with the earliest known copy dating to about 350 BCE. Other copies originate from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods of Egyptian history, and one is from the 2nd century CE. Their titles use the word breathing as a metaphorical term for all the aspects of life that the deceased hope to experience again in the afterlife. An analysis of one such treatise, Papyrus FMNH 31324, containing an edition of the first book of breathing, was recently published by Foy Scoff, head of research archives at the University of Chicago, in October's edition of the Journal of Near Eastern Studies. The Book of the Dead began to appear around 3700 to 3500 years ago, with the subsequent emergence of 3 types of Book of Breathing manuals on how to achieve deification in the afterlife. The Letter for Breathing, believed to have been written by ancient Egyptian goddess Isis for her brother Osiris, the First Book of Breathing, and the Second Book of Breathing are the 3 books of breathing which were intended to help the owner of the text join the gods in the afterlife. They were either inscribed on a pyramid wall or a coffin or on a papyrus. The texts were not canonical and represented something in the manner of a collection of spells, with all of them varying in wording and illustrations, as did the Books of the Dead. The latter were Egyptian mortuary texts made up of spells placed in tombs and believed to protect and aid in the afterlife. According to Scoff, the texts on pyramids, coffins, and in the Book of the Dead are all related. The 3 books of breathing were almost exclusively handwritten on papyri with basically similar contents. The instructions varied, with Letter for Breathing telling the user to roll up the papyrus, wrap it in linen, and place it under the mummy's left arm. The First Book of Breathing instructs that it should be placed under the head. The Second Book of Breathing suggests the text be placed under the feet. Contrary to some assumptions, deification was not so much a privilege of the elites as it was for anyone who could afford it. Burials in ancient Egypt range from simply being placed in a shallow hole in the desert all the way up to sumptuous tombs and everything in between. As far as we know, what was provided for you at death was related to your wealth in life, says Scoff. However, the mighty pharaohs did not need text on papyrus. Royalty had their spells placed on more robust media, such as tomb walls, sarcophagi, coffins, masks, statues, and anywhere else the text could be inscribed. While mortuary papyri were individualized to bear the name of the dearly departed at the beginning, saying, quote, "The first book of breathing is placed under the head of so-and-so," the Papyrus FMNH 31324 unfortunately has the first column of text missing. Another thing that differentiates the books is that in the Book of the Dead, the individual spells, how to breathe and drink water or how to navigate the underworld, are separated and entitled. While the First Book of Breathing took its origins from spells in the Book of the Dead, the content was not edited and reshaped. The result was a single continuous composition which was much re-edited by the scribes themselves. The scribes were very keen on what they were putting in and leaving out, but the selected spells are given in the same order as in the original Book of the Dead. Papyrus FMNH 31324 contains an abridged version of the Book of Breathing, says the scientist, underscoring that the manuscript is, on the whole, well written and free from egregious scribal errors. Scoff concludes, that as in the Ptolemaic and Roman periods of ancient Egypt, which is when the books of breathing were used, most burials were multiple, with several mummies placed in a single tomb. As a result, the breathing papyri were seemingly wrapped up with the mummy itself, possibly to ensure the spells do not erroneously affect the wrong body. Scoff suspects this copy of the Books of Breathing was designed and assembled at the Theban necropolis, where archaeologists have discovered several other copies. For those of you interested in the content of the Books of Breathing, you can find a fully translated version at the link in the description of this video.